And when fine becomes your standard, for me, that's underliving. So I said, every time you talk about this husband you're getting ready to divorce, you start coughing.
A discipline when I do it that's helped me immensely is picking one thing at the beginning of the day that I know I can win at. And it's not part of my to-do list, or it could be part of it, but I get to pick one thing.
So the book is very simply anywhere you can buy a book. You can find it Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, a bunch of other stores. You can find.
Hey, I'm Justine Reese, vocal empowerment coach, voice actor, and host of Claim Your Voice. If you've ever felt shut down, scared to speak up, told you were too much, or just hated hearing your own voice on playback, you're in the right place. I'll be bringing on experts, creators, and fascinating humans who help people transform from the inside out. Got a topic you want to tackle? Reach out, because helping people claim their voice is my favorite thing. This podcast isn't just about how you sound. It's how you feel about your voice. Visualize it, vocalize it, monetize it. Let's go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Claim Your Voice podcast. I am very excited to introduce to you today Gina Maier Vincent. I want to tell you a little bit about Gina. And Gina and I met just a couple of weeks ago, and we were very taken with each other and our alignment in how we help people in the world claim their voices. And I think you have a very interesting way of doing that I can't wait to explore with you today. So Gina Maier Vincent is the founder of Exquisitely Aligned, author, podcast, and TV host, and creator of the emerging philosophy of Underliving. A modern observer of human behavior, she explores the space between external success and internal fulfillment, helping people create lives that feel as extraordinary as they look. Now, I do want to talk about a little bit the three things that we should know. And, we're just going to get into that because you can tell us about the three things that we should know. I was so taken with you and your diving into this idea of what underliving is and people's different concept of how they may be underliving, whether it be financial or spiritual. And you're a very interesting story about how you came to this. And could you share that with us? Because your background is also, to me, fascinating as a woman who's done many different things, both, as you said, as a TV host and now podcaster. But you had a journey in that was personal or younger, and something shifted for you. So Let's start there.
Yeah. So it was a Sunday morning and I was standing in front of the mirror and I could see the stack of invitations stamped and ready to send. And I was struggling with a conversation in my head. And as I reached for my lipstick, I realized I just couldn't put it on. And this was my signature red lipstick that I had worn for years now. And it came out that I was settling. And when fine becomes your standard, for me, that's underliving. So at 28, I called off my own wedding. Yeah.
Wow. And years later, when you were in your marriage, that I believe you're correct?
Yes.
Something
so
else
go ahead.
That was pretty, but there's obviously a journey between that point and that. So maybe give us the synopsis of from there to there, but then something else big happened that shifted yet again about this idea of underliving and living fulfilled and what we look like on the outside people and how you have helped others through your own experience.
Yep. So I called off that wedding at 28 and I knew with every piece of my body that it was the right thing to do. It became very quiet. My life was extremely quiet all of a sudden. And slowly, I found my way back to myself. Food started tasting better. Music started making me want to dance again. I could feel myself laugh with my entire body. You know what that feels like when your belly is a little tired afterwards, right? And I knew at that point there was a word I was looking for that I didn't have. And it took me a while to find, but I had found my way to finding love, becoming married, and having children. And life was fabulous. It really was, even though I didn't have a word for it. And 12 years later, I was at a point where I looked in the rearview mirror and I said, "Where are we going?" I was stopped at a red light, and the look on my children's faces, one in a car seat, one in a booster seat, told me something was really wrong. And that was because my husband was living 385 miles away, waiting for a kidney and liver transplant that might not happen in time. And I realized there I am again, right? And I was underliving. I got pulled away in a different direction. I think high achievers, people who are capable, they know how to keep going. Our society rewards us for keep going. They applaud silently for the exhaustion that we feel. And years later was when I finally figured out exquisitely aligned is that moment where you're really life is vivid. It's as if you put the glasses on that you didn't know you needed. The edges come back, the volume comes back to everything, colors, food, laughter. And underliving is that place. It's probably before burnout, if caught properly. And if you start watching society, you'll see a lot of it. Underliving is when someone says fine, because really the truth would be too disruptive.
And you talked about that moment too, where you were allowing, and this is very difficult. My father was a doctor, so I always felt like I had that person to go to if there was a medical condition in my family or within me. And I went through breast cancer, and of course, he was my first call every time there was a something, which happened over a period of 10 years before they found something. But you talked about that deciding to advocate and ask more questions as opposed to just settling for the information that you were getting. So in some ways, that's one kind of underliving. But what I thought was most interesting about your story there is the second that you opened yourself up and taking more, you could say assertive, maybe making assertive questions, things started happening. The decision to be more open-minded and maybe the universe kind of takes over a little bit.
I was always a strong-willed Italian New Yorker
I
with
don't see that at all, Gina. I don't see
yeah,
that at all.
and German, which can be thick-headed and stubborn, but what a combination, right? But it saved my husband's life. My husband is a physician himself, and if you are aware of the medical system, it's not perfect. Maybe it's not even ideal. These are my opinions, strictly my opinion only. I think we can fix it, but I don't know how. I don't have those answers. And I went up against his peers. I went up against the men in white. And let me tell you, they weren't happy with me. It wasn't until I got him 385 miles away to Florida, to Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville, where we were welcomed with wide open arms and big smiles. And they immediately would turn to me and say, "What are you noticing?" Versus the other hospital told me, "I'll speak with Mark in medical terms, and then I'll explain to you in layperson terms." And oftentimes they glossed over. So the ride home was me asking my husband, "Explain, what did that mean? What did this mean?" I walked around with a notebook, right? But finding your voice when you're up against the men in white in a broken system, which doesn't have to be the hospital. It could be societal systems. I talk about that later in the book about the conformity trap and fitting in and all those wonderful things that happen to us. But when we have the ability to see somebody's aliveness disappearing right in front of your eyes, and you have a 2-year-old in a kindergarten standing there with you, you really start to buck up, stand up, and I guess no longer care what somebody thinks because you're an advocate. And that could be, you could be advocating for your marriage. Again, breast cancer, for your health. I don't know what that journey was like for you, but I can only imagine what it could have been. And
Right.
we have to advocate for our children to get the best education and for them to understand the rules of the house or whatever it might be, the rules of your allowing them to drive your car. And that's what I enjoyed about getting to know you. Our voice is extremely powerful. I call it one of our 5 divine resources.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So Interesting too that your husband, I know doctors don't make great patients, at least that was the case for my father. And that as his spouse, him getting this information, like, okay, explain this to me. Well, meanwhile, it probably is coming in a little differently to him when it's him as opposed to a patient. But where do you see, you talk about this danger of living in the gap between what we want and what we are willing to admit we want. So, why do you think people are so afraid to really look at the truth of that or find the truth of that?
So I think there's a precursor to
Okay.
that,
Okay.
and it's busyness. I
Sure.
think people are overscheduled. I think that they are extremely busy. I think they believe a full calendar means a successful life. To me, I don't agree. I've watched for decades people thinking that busyness is a badge of honor and they wear it proudly. I think that we don't slow down and create space. I talk about that later in the book about the ability to leave time between appointments so that you're never late. In yoga, we taught a long time ago, Ashteya is not stealing. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember being late to meet a friend, and she said to me, Gina, I'm never late. And this is why. And she went on. And then years later, I learned Ashteya is not, do not steal. And I always think of stealing like taking someone's property, right? Like your beautiful necklace. I'm going to take it when you're not looking, right? Taking someone's time is stealing as well. And so I like to work with my clients to free up their calendar, add what I call white space. Someone said, I wondered why you called it white space.
Oh my
I
God, I
said,
said it today to somebody. I said to somebody, I need some more white space. I'm looking at my week and I'm going to create some white space. I love that. I totally
yeah.
agree with you. Yes.
And I think when we give ourselves the permission to have downtime, that's when we can be quiet enough to hear and ask those questions. So I know I answered your question in a little bit of a backward way, but I think that's when we realize, oh, I do have the permission to give myself to sit and ponder this. Why am I exhausted? Why am I unhappy? Why do I feel alone in a X amount a year marriage to somebody who I used to adore, and now I feel disconnected or frustrated. I don't know the right words, right?
I think that tell me if you agree when you work with clients, it's that fear of going to that shadow place or that darker place that is uncomfortable that we do want to avoid. So we get used to, as you say, is it productivity or is it distraction?
Yeah.
Learning the difference between that. How does that relate? I think we already answered this to living a more exquisite life. You work with high achievers, right? Why do you think so many successful people experience this decline in aliveness? And how have you, let's talk about some of those overcoming situations, maybe not just for yourself, but for your clients.
So I think it's again, when we're capable and when we're a high achiever, we're used to checking all the boxes and keep moving and get an award, an acknowledgement, an accomplishment, an advancement in our career, the next promotion, and so forth. And we never stop and celebrate what we've accomplished. We're just the next. I've had worked with Olympic athletes, and they tell me when they prepare for something and then the event is over, they have that same, oh my God, what's next? And I think we are constantly postponing other things while we're moving up here. And then the gap becomes so wide that aliveness disappears. We sit at dinner and we're thinking about what we have to do after dinner or what we have to do at our desk tomorrow. We go to a party, and although we're participating in a conversation, I've had clients tell me their mind is somewhere else. Or the other thing I see a lot is the lack of discernment. I had a young client, 24, in the UK, who was telling me she was struggling over the weekend where she was invited to a party of a good friend. There would be about 100 people. My client is a little more introverted and she is not a big drinker. She knew a lot of people would be drunk there or maybe not drunk, but drinking more than what she would have enjoyed, right? So the
Yeah.
conversations wouldn't be as fulfilling for her. And so she said, I heard your voice in my head, Gina, and I started going down the checklist, like pros, cons. And she said, and the cons won. She said, I decided not to go to the party. I stayed home. I had a quiet evening. I got to read. I did XYZ. She said, I had more energy when I woke up the next day. I went to an event and I got a new client. She said, had I gone to the party, I would have probably drank more than I wanted just so that I could numb myself from all the 100 people who had maybe a couple glasses too many. And she said, and it worked. So I think we have to have discernment. I think we need to slow down and just ask ourselves those questions, because high achievers can take on more than anyone else can, right? Burnout says, I can't do this anymore. Achievers under living, they're like, oh, I can keep going. I just don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah. And it sounds like another word for what we're talking about is boundaries, like developing the strength to have them. As somebody who's a recovering FOMO person, I think the pandemic was super great for me. And I talked about that when you had me on your podcast, that yeah, I needed a global pandemic to slow me down, but that's when I got to discover all these things. How do you help high achievers find those moments? There's lots of meditation. I'm a big believer in that. I'm a certified transformational meditation person. I help people that don't like to meditate, but there's so many different things.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear some of your secrets to that
Yeah.
unlocking, uncoding that is so required for living a divine life.
Yeah. So I usually start even simpler than meditating. For me, it's more give yourself 5 minutes. I
Yeah.
like drinking a cup of tea. You saw when we started, I had my tea in hand. I just finished it. But what does it take for you to do nothing while you're sipping your morning beverage, whether that be matcha, hot tea, coffee, or a glass of water? What about in the afternoon? Can you take a water break? Are you somewhere where you could sit near a window or, like me, go outside for 5 minutes? And
Yes.
for me, it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and then
Yeah.
maybe you work up to 8 minutes. And before you know it, during those moments, you can ask yourself some questions. What would I really like to be doing this weekend? Who would I really like to be having a conversation, go for a walk, share a glass of wine, a bottle of wine, or whatever that might, dinner? Where would I like to? I had this conversation with a new client the other day. I said, what do you enjoy doing? And there was dead silence. That's the problem. I don't know. And so oftentimes with the clients I work with, it's less about boundaries. It's more about the discernment of being intentional. I talk about it in the book. There's 3 I invitations: interesting, intriguing, and just enough intimidating. I think that's where we expand our experience of living. And when you do that, that's where the aliveness comes in. It's like, oh, wow, okay, I feel this. I'm enjoying this. I'm learning something new. And it's not always about collegiate learning, but learning something about yourself. I don't like being, I don't know, we were climbing, this is many years ago, and I was laughing when somebody was showing me pictures of something similar, which was zip lining in Guatemala when we adopted our daughter 20 years ago. Back then,
It was
it
probably
was
not that so safe.
it was
No
really a
safety,
rickety.
safety harnesses. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
harness was good. It was the rickety, like pieces of wood that were barely nailed to the tree to get up there to start. Nowadays, if you go, it's usually a beautifully sculptured staircase that's solid. We were literally clinging to a tree, walking up what was a makeshift staircase, and we survived it. It was thrilling, and it's something we'll never forget, right? Because it put us in that bit of, okay, I'm alive and I'm wondering if I'm going to die here. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you
which
have
we
those
don't want to
moments.
we don't want to take our clients there, but I do love now that you're past that reference point of taking ourselves to the edge of comfort and just past it, never to the point of something where we could,
No.
really hurt ourselves. But that metaphor is great, I think. And we discover so much about ourselves by doing that. I led a retreat in Costa Rica, and I really loved the idea of taking people, if they wanted this kind of experience, and we called it Edge of Discovery, Claim Your Voice, because part of it was rafting in and rafting out. There is zip lining, there is water hiking. Everyone's going to have a different edge, right? And so it sounds like you and I are not like to for our own personal enjoyment, but see the value in taking a client to whatever. For me, it's around speaking up. For you, it sounds like it's also about so many bigger things. But I love the simplicity of reminding, as you just did, around even your cup of tea can be an experience if we allow it. Allowance. What do you feel or what do you see shift, especially for the high achievers that maybe don't believe this is going to work for them? What have you seen that shift happen? Maybe some interesting things that have worked to get them into state, basically, over something simple to take.
Yeah. So I had a client who was from California, but now living in the Midwest, in the northern part, and she was unhappy there for a multitude of reasons, but she was trying to make it work. And so I asked her, and she was also trying to lose weight. A couple different things were going on in her life, which is very normal, right? And I asked her to explore her neighborhood and just go for a walk. And this was a neighborhood she didn't like. And I asked her to not take her AirPods. So I didn't want her listening to anything. She worked as a PR person, so she was always connected to the news, needed to know what was going on everywhere so that she could help her clients fit in where needed, speak here about this, whatever. And I said to her, please, when you walk, I want you to just 10, 15 minutes. Then it became 20 minutes without any sort of device listening to. And she started noticing just how beautiful the neighbors' houses were, the gardens, the flowers blooming, the trees. She
Right
would
there.
she would text me every day with something different. Oh my gosh, just met my neighbor. We'd been neighbors for X amount of years. She lives 3 doors away. I hadn't met her before. I had a great conversation about XYZ. And one of the things she wanted to bring back to her life, when I asked her, what do you miss? What did you give up as a high achiever who was now her own business owner? It was horses. Because I asked her to go back to childhood. And she said, I haven't ridden in X amount of years. I sold my horse, la la. And so I said, now I'd like you to start when you meet people. Hey, I'm interested in getting back to horseback riding. And before you knew it, she met somebody in the neighborhood. They knew somebody who needed a pet sitter for their horse, and she was the woman. So it just, if we open the door and create the space and be intentional about what we're looking for, it all shows up. It's when we're so busy that we're running behind, that we're overscheduled, that we go to bed, that we fall into bed exhausted. I had somebody on the show tell me it was Thanksgiving. She reached under the guest bedroom bed to get placemats and linens that were her Thanksgiving go-to, and she fell asleep. That's how exhausted she was. And I know we laugh at it, but at the same time, how many times have we pushed ourselves to that verge, excuse me, not urge, but that verge of almost falling asleep as you're reaching for something under the bed and the carpeting is right there and it becomes your pillow, that soft landing. It just proves how capable a high achiever is, that they can keep going until the body can no longer keep going.
It's interesting when you think about, I'm just thinking about training, like the kind of training that Navy SEALs do, for instance, where they almost intentionally are taking these young men to the point who's gonna be able to withstand this. And it seems almost cruel when you hear about it. Obviously, they've got their reasoning for doing it, but why are we doing that to ourselves, right?
When we don't have to.
We don't have to. That even, I think any high achiever can get to, oh, I just got to do this one more thing. one thing that's helped, I think, a discipline when I do it that's helped me immensely is picking one thing at the beginning of the day that I know I can win at. And it's not part of my to-do list, or it could be part of it. I get to pick one thing. It's the choice too of, okay, this is the day I'm going to outline my book, or knowing this is not the day I'm going to outline my book because I know I can't win at that. This is the day I'm going to send that one email to that one person, or I'm going to take a 15-minute walk. That's my one thing. What do you think about those sorts of discipline to get us into living a more exquisite life, that are little baby steps? Because that sounds like what you're talking about. Take a walk in the neighborhood. We forget how many days go by with it. I don't even go out and see the garden, my own rose garden, that there's these flowers that are blooming out there.
Yeah. I think let's just focus on women for a second. I
Sure.
think for women, it's creativity. And you were talking ironically about your garden, which is where I just came from. I had my appointment. I had a gap purposefully set between that and this interview, and I have a gap between us and my next appointment. And I was outside trimming my roses and my canna lilies, which are going crazy. Both are going crazy. And I think, yes, the one win, that's definitely a known great advice. But I think it can be even smaller than that of being creative. Women thrive when they are creative. And oftentimes we are thrown into a man's world where we're asked to produce, we're asked to function. And we talked about capability already. And so if being creative is trimming the roses for a couple minutes, or clipping one and bringing it to your desk, or bringing it to the kitchen table, whatever that, or your nightstand, so that when you wake up in the morning, that's the first thing. It can be just a couple minutes. It doesn't have to be big. I love clothing, hair, makeup, jewelry. That is a way of expressing myself without even saying a word. It used to be what we had 7 seconds. Now I don't think we have even half of that.
3 to 5, what I tell people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, it's fun to pull together an outfit, but not everybody is about clothing. So whatever that might be for you. My daughter showed me a new book that she bought, and I'm trying to read, is it called Dot Art? Where it's like a page with a bunch of dots, and then they're numbered, and then you get to pick. So all the sixes are going to be teal, all the sevens are going to be yellow, and then you decide. And my daughter is studying architecture, so she's got this brilliant eye for color and for light and shadow. And so she showed me a couple of them, and I was like, great. Think about years ago when they had those adult coloring books that you could bring on an airplane. It could be that. It, I want to say mindless, but you are using your mind. You're using the creative mind. And I think once we bring that back into every day, some people it's cooking, baking. Who was I was just talking to? It was baking for them, another client. She was like, oh, I don't cook, but I'm a mean baker. And I was like, oh, great. You can't wait
I
to
enjoy
taste
eating
this.
the baked goods, but I don't like, but I do like to cook. And even if it's simple, I think
Yeah.
there's something too about coming back to the table, those simple things that I think I talked about with
Yep.
you. We talked about on the other day about just taking that time and being together and having that connection. You talk about Wayne Dyer, Hay, as influencing your work. What are some lessons that maybe come to mind that guide you today and that you keep here?
From the two of them?
Yeah.
Yep. So Wayne, I read many of his books, probably more well read than Louise Hay. Louise Hay, I always come back to a book that one of my clients gave me, I don't know, 24 years ago. And my puppy just recently got a hold of it. So the cover is now
A book like that.
not attached, no longer attached, but luckily it's like maybe now it sells for $15, but back in the day it was a $5 book, and it was, you could go in and look at diagnoses. So it could be coughing. I had a client and I knew immediately when she came to me, I said, tell me about this cough, because I saw the pattern quickly. And she's like, nobody can figure it out. I've been to this, that, I've had that test. And I said, you know what, when you cough? And she said, no. I said, every time you talk about this husband you're getting ready to divorce, you start coughing. And I said, I believe that you will stop coughing when this ends. And sure enough, she's not coughed in a few years. And it was just that because she said, this doctor sent me to that doctor, to this test, to that test. But every time she said his name or something about this process of separating, she started coughing and uncontrollable. Anytime she talked about her kids, her career, no coughing. And at first I thought, okay, maybe it's I have a couple dogs. Are you allergic? Oh, no, I have dogs. Okay, perfect. And then I was like, I see the pattern. Louise Hay, I love the way she was able to connect how somebody is feeling, their symptoms with what is going on, how the discomfort became dis-ease and the dis-ease made it into the body as a diagnosis. For Wayne Dyer, it's more about he had so many beautiful things. I know the thing I used to use the most before Exquisitely Aligned became what it is, when I needed other people's information to do the work for me instead of my own teachings, it was Excuses Be Gone, his book, Excuses Be Gone, because I found a lot of people had an excuse for everything. I'm sorry I was blank because of blank. I'm sorry I feel this way because of that. No, what are you sorry about? What is the excuse? Is it even necessary? Let's just figure it out and keep moving. So those, but they brought so much goodness to the world. Those are just two quick ones.
Yeah, I love that. So imagine someone's listening today and they look successful from the outside, but they're feeling disconnected. What do you think is the first conversation they need to have with themselves when this episode ends?
Yeah. So you're saying they're aware they feel disconnected.
Yeah,
They feel like
maybe
something's missing.
coming up because
That's,
they're listening to this conversation. They're like,
yeah.
oh man, when was the last
I,
time I went for a walk and looked at the flowers and I have white space on my calendar? These are great reminders for many of us, even if they're
simple.
done, they're simple. Yeah.
Yeah. Even I love bubbles. Do you remember the wand with the bubbles? That's so simple. And what are they? 99 cents. I don't know. Maybe now they're 10.99. I have no idea. But
I was recently at an event and they had, it was at, I think I was telling you, there's this movement right now called The Table. And it was part of this event that we would be sitting at the table and there were questions. It was a way of engaging us. But the other thing that they had were bubble guns on the table. And so they were just, so people were just passing around. And then I took it and we were on grass. So I took my shoes off, excuse me, and I started running and everybody remembered that. They're like, oh, you're the one that was running with the bubbles. And it just hit me. But you're right, there's something so playful, bubble. So I just love that. And you're reminding me, I was somewhere and they were giving them away and I just keep it in my purse. And you're right.
Yeah.
You take those bubbles out, people immediately start smiling and laughing.
Yeah.
I love
it. It just brings back awe and wonder. And I think for the biggest thing is for most high achievers, it's permission to explore without having to get it right. So we have three different things. Permission to slow down, to create the white space, everything we just spoke about, to explore, wonder without having to get it right. Because oftentimes high achievers feel like they're there. They might not tell you it, but proving something. Proving I'm the best suited for the promotion, proving I'm the best suited whatever XYZ field you're in or competition you're in. They're often very competitive and they're often going after attention, approval, achievement, accomplishments, acknowledgments. It just keeps going up the ladder. And sometimes all you need to know is you can just play. The bubble is the example, the perfect, in my opinion, example that boys, girls, men, women, anybody can come back to and think, oh yeah, I remember that, because the colors, right? The bubble, when you see when the light hits it, you have iridescence.
Yeah.
The fact that it's blowing away with you wondering which direction is it going to go? Can I catch it on my finger without it
Is it going to
popping?
pop? When's it going to?
Right, exactly. All the different things. And what is the person next to me going to think when they see me running down the grass with this, right? So you have all these layers, and I think it's just very simple. If you have a child near you, watch them for a few minutes. If you need to borrow one, fine. No, I'm teasing. But that
No,
you
but
can just go to a dog park, go to a playground, just go to
I
the beach.
and you're right, that observance of a young child. I was at a meeting. I still do some 12-step work. I think 12-step work is so valuable, not for everybody or everything, but just the concepts around being powerless and not having crosstalk and things like that. But there was a woman sharing, and she was just holding her baby. And
Yeah.
she wasn't even referring to the baby. She was a fairly, I had not seen her since she'd had this baby, but I was absolutely fascinated the way the baby was like just sucking on its
Yeah.
mouth, like looking around. But what came to me so much is that baby doesn't have judgment yet. Baby's just in fascination mode.
Yeah.
And how we like to say, oh, I tried not judgmental, but our brains just go to judgment. And some of that is really great. For instance, your example of, and I can tell you, I'm telling you, people, Gina walked into the room and you will never forget Gina because of the way that she was carrying herself and what she was wearing. Because it was and it's not just about the confidence. It's just, hey, you were telling me something about you with your clothing. And now that you've that, I see that's something that you love to do. I too love clothing. And I don't often think of it that way. But when I'm in an outfit that feels really great, it's just a feeling, which is why colors and clothing do matter, of
Yeah.
course, are the way we present. But I really do love that because, but that in a way is a judgment, right? So just to catch ourselves in judgment,
Yeah.
to catch those moments. I could talk so long with you about this, but I really want to hear your sort of whatever you want to wrap this up in what you would want to leave our listeners with in terms of your philosophy around underliving and some of the decodes. Tell us about
Yeah.
where we can find your book, where we can find you, and all
Mhm.
around that.
Yeah. So the book is very simply anywhere you can buy a book. You can find it Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, a bunch of other stores. You can find me at exquisitelyaligned.com. All the information, I'm guessing, is in the
Yes,
show
we'll be
notes.
all in the show
And
notes.
I was
Yes,
going to share a very quick story about judgment. It's in the book, but I'll leave
please.
it shorter.
Okay.
It's my husband and I were walking in Dana Point Harbor here locally. And as that's a smaller harbor than Newport.
Yeah.
And the sun was hitting something that was sparkling just so miraculously. And if you're like me, that you like the light in the world, sparkles make you smile. And so I looked up, and there it was, the water lily. It was a super yacht. And my mind started drifting through all these layers, like all the different hands that touched this boat to create what I was looking at. And as I'm standing there in my moment of awe in my head, having this, okay, oh my gosh. So an architect, a designer, or the captain, the craftsman, the crew, all these people, the people who made the pillows and the silverware and my husband goes, who needs a boat that big? And so I realized immediately we were having a conversation about judgment, and where he was coming from was totally different than I. He was coming from judgment, who nobody needs this, it's waste. Think
Wasteful.
about how much gas, etc. And I was thinking about how many people this person employed, how many people still have a job because they need to drive the boat, clean the boat, care for the boat, repair, etc. All the gas he's buying, it's he, she, they are buying. And it was just a moment that reminded me, and I was so glad that story made it into the book with the depth that I'm not sharing right now. But because it's one that everyone comes back to me, oh my gosh, the water lily really made me realize, how am I perceiving my life? So for me, under living and exquisitely aligned, the question would be, is where are you settling for fine? And where should there be more possibility? because oftentimes the judgment, yes, it can be from the outside. I can hear a few people in my life who've judged me. And every time I walk away, I think, that's their problem. But the truth is, really, the judgment is usually from within.
You're
So,
right. And we sometimes can't catch it right away. So we'll have the thought, but the trick is to, okay, what's the next thought?
yeah,
What's the next thought? There's this word, I don't know.
without the excuses from Wayne Dyer,
Without
right?
excuses. But what's the next thought? Like when I have that thought of, ugh, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Oh, I had something to say. And you know what? Maybe next time I won't say that. But
Mhm.
it's very interesting, that dichotomy that you had with your husband. And it's interesting in the term of expressing ourselves sometimes fully, because often we don't realize how we're being perceived. Here was a situation that you two were having basically the same experience walking across, and you're perceiving it one way and he's perceiving it another way. But
Totally different.
often have we said something
Yeah.
thinking one thing like how we wanted to be perceived. And I use this with parents a lot too. Like when you tell your kid, a younger kid, hey, it's time to go, versus time to go, right? You're mad at me, or, oh, what are we going to get to do? Our tone.
Exciting.
So I see these things very integrated. So let's just wrap up with, here on Claim the Voice, we believe your voice is your superpower. And without trying to leave with some brilliant lesson, what is one thing your voice has allowed you, claiming it has allowed you to create that, or be perceived differently, that comes to mind?
I think I'm just going to quickly go back to my husband. My voice saved his life. And I didn't believe that at first until a new neighbor came to me and said, oh, I know exactly who you are. The woman who lived between us, she was 2 doors away, and told me, you're the woman who willed your husband alive. And I was like, oh, yeah, I did. And yeah, our voice is powerful. The way we say something, I agree with you, and it is our superpower. And it should definitely, in yoga, there's a teaching of when to speak and when not to speak. And that was discernment again. So I'm not going to always say speak up, but speak your truth.
Absolutely. Speak your truth and have discernment to tap into that interior voice. Gina, this was an absolute delight. I cannot wait to see you again. And one of the great joys is that we did get to meet in person in a very hybrid world now. I'm so grateful for the ability for us to be able to have these kinds of conversations in the virtual world and bring them out to the world. So thank you. All of the information for Claim Your Voice, workshops, books, and even for a voiceover, if you want to hear more, is all listed in our show notes, as well as where to find and locate Gina Maier Vincent. Gina, thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you for the privilege to share my voice with you and your audience. It was delightful.
It was delightful. All right.
Thanks for joining me on Claim Your Voice. If something here sparked your inner voice or made you finally stop cringing at your own playback, share this episode with someone who needs it, because clarity creates connection. Connection creates opportunity, and your voice was never meant to stay quiet. And if you've got an idea about something you'd like to hear about on Claim Your Voice, send me an email or put some notes in the chat. Till next time, visualize the dream, vocalize the truth, and monetize the magic.